Imagine a situation where you've been asked a question and you don't really have the answer. You're not very clear about it. Maybe you don't know the subject matter really well. And therefore, you don't really feel confident if you have it right or not. Just notice in that moment what your body language is like. You fumble, your voice doesn't come out clearly, maybe you search for words, maybe you're trying to think of an answer to say. And even if you're able to put together something and appear confident, the fact that you're doing it sometimes gets across to people anyway. And there are very, very few people in very, very few instances who can fake it, right? But by far, about 99% of the time, we see ourselves falling short of what we would consider our best version to be. Flip this around and think of an instance where you spoke about something that you were deeply passionate about, a subject matter that you know, that you've studied deeply, and you're very, very sure of what you're saying. Notice how your body language is, notice how your tone is, notice how your voice modulation changes, notice how you come across to other people, notice the impact that you have on people who are really listening to you. Maybe they went through a perception change. Maybe they were influenced. Maybe they were inspired by something that you said. Maybe it set them off thinking in a completely different direction, and then you get to know about that a couple of months down the line. And so, the focus of this workshop that we're taking you guys through, the public speaking and the presentation skills, the focus is coming from drawing from your own experiences and kind of replicating that across the board. Now, this is not to say that if you're not very clear about the subject matter, you cannot somehow fine tune and learn about it and put yourself together in a way that is presentable. Lots and lots of people do that, and that can be done as well. And this is not to say that there is absolutely no work required on your voice modulation, your body language, and your presentation skills if you are passionate about a particular subject. Refinement is always good. Having said that, the reason why we're going with the second version is because when it comes from within and when we know something deeply and when we are passionate about it, the impact that we create, because it is so dear to us, is automatic. There is something somebody always takes away when we come from that space. And it's simple, right? Like if you really, really look at babies, they know body language. They are able to communicate even without words and get their work done. So we all have that capability. And in the attempt to master the nuances, we forget what we can be capable of and what experiences that we have that we can draw from. So this is coming from that space. Having said that, please do reference other reference material, anything that you wish to research, incorporate in your learning, please do so, right? So welcome to public speaking and presentation skills course by Tripti Coaching Center. This is the first chapter called conceptualization. Now, what does conceptualization really mean? Conceptualization is a portion where we are getting our thoughts organized and we are identifying whether the opportunity that we are getting to talk about something or do a workshop or a program is really something that's worth it for the audience and worth it for the speaker or the person who's in the space of giving. If these two come together, then it makes sense. We will see more about that later. Right? So let's start off. To begin, it is absolutely necessary and foundational to identify what is it that you want to give. So let's take the baking example again over here since we started that off in our introduction. Say you're a person who's very passionate about baking and that's a passion you want to share with the world. That giving, that need to give is pervasive, that need to share is innate to you. And that's how, when this context appears, where there may be a bunch of experts, bunch of students, a bunch of people who love baking, or people who want to get you introduced to the idea of baking, are people who give you an opportunity to share your passion with, right? So that's your context. So in the context, these factors are pretty self-explanatory. So who are the people who's going to come to the talk or the workshop? Now for the continuation of this, we want to differentiate between talk is just conversation, which is a presentation from your side, that could vary from 5 minutes to half an hour, 1 hour, whatever. Workshop is when you combine conversation and talk along with activities, and that becomes a workshop. Workshops are usually longer, minimum 1 hour to be effective. And programs are basically for our benefit and for referencing different formats in this course. Programs would be multiple workshops. So you can have workshops which run over 3 days. There could be workshops which are 1.5 hours, and then you can cover it over, say, a month's time. You could also have courses and programs that can run over a year, 2 years. We use the word courses and programs interchangeably. There may be other definitions out there, and we're not contesting that. We are just defining that particular terminology for our common understanding. So, if we use these words in this course, these are the things that we mean. And so, we hope that is clear. So, who the purpose would be why of that particular uh, talk even happening, right? So we have a bunch of people who are going to come to your workshop. Why are you going to go talk to them? So maybe these are people who want to know more about baking, and maybe you've come up with 5 amazing techniques that you want to share in a way that they can make the world's best bread. And knowledge sharing would be the purpose about new innovative techniques you have in the area of baking. Now, please notice that purpose is a little general. The second aspect would be objective. Objective is what you as a speaker are going to be achieving by the end of that session, or by the end of that workshop, talk, program, whatever that session might entail. And here you may say that you want to share 5 amazing techniques. By the end of it, you want to talk about baking, you want to talk about why passion for baking can give you a lot of joy, and then you want to get down and nail these 5 techniques. And you may decide that people are not going to retain that knowledge, so you're going to share some material with them as well so that they can take that away. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the difference between purpose, objective, and takeaway a little later, but please bear that in mind for now. When people come to a particular talk or a workshop or a program, please know that they're coming for themselves. They are looking at taking away something from that space. So, for the time they spend, for the money they spend, they want something back. And they will be motivated to come if that particular topic is meeting their needs in some way that they already have. So, just as you are in the space of giving, the audience is there to receive. And if what you have to give and what they're looking for, there is a commonality in full or in part, then the engagement makes sense. So if you're a doctor and you have absolutely no idea about gardening, and you get a context in which you got to share about gardening, that kind of interaction or that kind of engagement just does not make sense, right? So we hope that you've got the needs bit a little bit clearer. Now, what is the expectation? Now, say you nail down this half an hour session, which is the duration that you've decided. Say it's a talk, and that's the opportunity that you have, and this is going to be in a particular hall that is in the community center at your locality. So you have nailed that down. And then there are these people who are coming. Now they see the topic and they formulate an expectation. They don't know whether you're just going to talk or whether you're going to show them what these 5 techniques are. Are they going to be able to bake these things after that or not? Like that, those things are not very clear. And it is important when people turn up and when you start your talk or your workshop, at the get go, you clarify those expectations right there. These are called expectations management, and these are very, very necessary so that you and the audience are on the same page and what they're expecting to receive is what you're giving, and therefore there is congruency across the space. So the rest of it is self-explanatory. We've covered who, what their needs are, the expectations, and managing them. Location could be online or in person. Duration can be decided based on what kind of a format you have, what's the opportunity that you're getting, and what will be the time duration effective to communicate or put across what you want to put across. You also want to define or decide on the duration based on the attention spans. Usually, it is said that about 1.5 hours is great with about 10 minutes break, and you don't want people getting thirsty, wanting to go to the bathroom, and getting restless and things like that. People cannot go on more than 8 hours in a day. So please remember that if it is an intense workshop that you plan to do, please ensure that it doesn't go beyond 8 hours, because people cannot digest more than that. It and also engage people in a different way. If you're going to have a format like you go away to a different place like an outbound or a retreat, please make sure that if you are doing activities, they're not workshop related activities, they're some fun related activities that lets people leave their hair down and relax and chill out and get to know each other and things like that outside those 8 hours as such. And so that's the important thing about duration, the purpose we've talked about. Number of people, minimum have 5 people. You can go as big as you need. Depends on the kind of talk workshop that you're conducting. So if you are looking at teaching a particular skill, you're looking at being able to notice people one on one. If you're expecting interaction from the audience in a way that you want to see that each and every person has a certain takeaway, then the bandwidth will become really less. You're looking at even 5 to 6 people in a workshop for a very intense, in-depth work is a lot to handle for one particular facilitator, one particular speaker. But if you're just going to go on stage and you have an idea to communicate, you're going to just do that in a one-to-many format, and you're going to just have questions come from the audience, which can work in person or which can work in an online webinar kind of a concept. That is also fine, but that is a more one way kind of a thing where you just narrate, and there you can go even like 1,000, 2,000 people, and that would just still work. So once you have nailed down your context, the next thing to decide is to identify what your topics are. We've talked about what the objectives are. So, if objectives are basically nailing down specifically what you're going to deliver by the end of it, the objective is from the speaker standpoint, whereas a takeaway is the same thing as objective, but it is from the audience standpoint. So, for example, let's take the baking example here. We are talking about 5 amazing techniques that will give you world class bread. And the objective is to knowledge share about these 5 techniques. What will your takeaway be for the audience? The takeaway will be that you will get 5 world class techniques to create the best bread ever. And you not only get to interact with a person who's invented it, you also get notes that you can take away, and you can try this in your baking and share it with your community and give us a feedback. So that is their takeaway. So takeaway, audience gets a little bit more because of the situation and because of what they are looking to take and receive more than what you give, because the context itself creates those opportunities. So it is looking at the objectives from the audience's perspective and putting it in their language. Whenever we've talked about it, could be online or offline, you would want to, at this point of time, identify whether the venue is suitable. Now, if you want to get on stage and talk, then that's a venue. Or if you just want to be on a ground level and have people seated in a circle and you just want to have it like a conversation, that could be one way to look at it. If you're doing a half an hour talk and say you decide to do a demonstration and like a live demonstration, and actually prepare certain things and demonstrate how these techniques really work. That could be another way to do it. So, depending on how you wish to execute your particular delivery, your venue becomes very, very important. Now, the moment you take it online, the dynamics change, and then you have to decide based on that. So, in online, the technique that you might want to communicate will not be live, so it might be difficult for you to show. You can show as well, if that could also work, or you might decide to just go with a video and demonstrate it through a video. So the dynamics in person and online change, but you can basically, depending on how you want to communicate this across and how you want to get across to your audience, you need to decide on the format accordingly, and the things that you need, and the tools that you need, and the facility that you need, and the support that you need in the online and in person version. So by the time you reach here and you have thought about the context, you thought about what you're going to give, you've nailed down the topic, you're basically very, very clear at this point if you're going ahead with this talk or not, if it's relevant for you or not, if it's making sense to you or not, if it's making sense to the audience or not. So by this time, it is decided, yes, we're going ahead, or no, this does not make sense, or this makes somewhat sense. Is there enough value versus non-value versus the cost, like the cost benefit analysis kind of a thing. And if it's of value and the benefits outweigh the cost, we might still decide to go ahead. So say the talk is on and you're on and you're good to go. You also want to define during this phase itself rather than later, because this is going to pop up at some point. And if you land up delivering your talk without really thinking this through at the get go, this is probably going to leave you a little disconcerted. And what I'm talking about here is drawing a boundary of what is included in what you're willing to give, given the time constraints. Please keep that absolutely in mind, given the audience, given the time constraints. What is it that you will cover, and what is it that you will not cover? This is very, very important to define. Some things are very obvious, like if you're going to be talking about baking, obviously you're not going to be talking about pet care, and that is very, very clear. But some things might be more subtle. Like, for example, if you're saying 5 techniques of baking bread, maybe you don't want to be talking about if these techniques are applicable in cake or not. So you take a call. You decide whether you're going to talk about how these 5 techniques are going to be applicable in the baking world, or you're saying no. The scope is just that we're going to be talking about these 5 techniques in baking bread, and that's it. We're not going to be addressing anything else. Everything else is out of scope as far as this talk is concerned. And this entire thing put together formulates the concept. In the talk, there's a term called concept that we have not really talked about. The concept is a general idea of what you're going to put out there, and the moment you have an objective, your concept is very clear. Your concept can be a free flow write up on areas that you want to cover, the thoughts that you want people to have. Identify those 5 techniques that you want people to get from you as a knowledge base, and that would cover the entire thing that we're talking about over here. So once you've nailed all of these down, the nailing of it down basically means documentation, which means that we provided a template. Please take the template and write all of these down. The moment we write it down, we crystallize it in a way rather than keeping it in our heads, and that's extremely relevant in you being able to take this in a step-by-step manner. We've also included a concept example of this course itself, and you can take a look at it as well. So that can serve as an example for you to fill up the template. All the links are available in the description. So what you need to do after this lesson is record a concept video. We would suggest that you get used to talking, start expressing yourself. Basically, the concept template is enough in terms of getting the job done. But since you are a beginner, it is a good idea to record a concept video. If you are an expert, it is still good to do so, because if you are sharing this idea with many people and you want to get their inputs in terms of what you want to think, a video is easier to do than you personally going and talking to different people, and that could work for beginners and intermediaries as well. Fill out the conceptualization template. And another thing that you can do is, at this point, get the invite ready. The invite is just basically letting the audience know the details of the program. Now, you may be doing it yourself, or you may be getting somebody else's help to design the invite. If somebody else is designing the invite, you need to have the matter ready. So, what does the invite include? It includes a topic, maybe a short description of what people can expect. Please be sure to include takeaways, the time, duration when they have to be there, how long it will take, and the venue. So if it is online, then the online link, when, why, how will it be provided, and if it is offline, basically the address. So this covers the conceptualization chapter of this. You are now ready with your concept once you've done your assignment. Please be sure to take feedback of people. One is, you can take a feedback of an expert who can tell you from an expert point of view. The other one is just about anybody who can give you a layperson kind of an input. Please remember never to shake from what you have decided to give and what you've decided to do, because only you can take a call on that. Other people cannot. When somebody is saying they don't understand, or they cannot relate, or they're coming across, you're coming across in a certain way that is not making sense to them, rather than take it at face value, try to understand where they're coming from, make tweaks, and see if it makes sense to the other person. Sometimes concepts may not make sense to a layperson, it might make sense to an expert, and please keep that in mind. The layperson will be able to relate when you actually deliver the final version, and that is the acid test that you have to do. So before you go to actually deliver the final show, it's always a good idea to do a dry run with laypersons, so that you can really gauge whether the concept that you have come up with, if it is about a complex topic, if you're able to communicate just about to anybody. Unless you're doing a talk with experts and it's a very technical field, always it is a good idea to take common understanding, simple understanding of most people have, so that anybody who comes to your audience can get a sense of what you're trying to say, would be very, very important. So go from that perspective, unless there are specific requirements for you to do it differently. So please keep all of these in mind as you move forward from conceptualization to design in the next chapter. Thank you so much. Wishing you all the best.